I thought the fact that I was expecting a baby was my private matter, until my roommate told me it was affecting her enough that I should pay her to move out. So, I'm currently living in a shared 2-bedroom apartment in a major city with a close friend. Each of us has our own bathroom, and she has the master bedroom while we split all living costs evenly. At the same time, I'm in a long-distance relationship, and not long ago I found out that I'm pregnant, still at a very early stage, and it honestly came as a shock. Our lease is scheduled to end on June 30th, so I approached my roommate with a practical question. I asked if she would be open to continuing the arrangement on a month-to-month basis for a short period after the lease ends, just enough time for me to get closer to my due date before I eventually move in with my parents. My parents live in a different major city, roughly a 3-hour commute from where I work. I have to be at my job in person twice a week, so realistically, that kind of travel would become exhausting and unsustainable if it lasted too long. My roommate, however, made it clear that she did not want to extend the lease on a month-to-month basis at all. I respected her decision without any pushback and told her that it was completely understandable. I said I would simply plan my move for July, once our lease officially ends, and take care of everything on my side from there. Today, my roommate brought up something completely unexpected. She told me that she no longer feels comfortable continuing to live together until the lease ends. In her words, she didn't sign up to share a home with someone who is pregnant or planning to start a family, and because of that, she believes I should be the one responsible for paying to break the lease early so she wouldn't have to remain in the apartment for the next 3 months. I tried to understand her position, and asked her what exactly would change for her in a practical sense, considering we would still just be living in the same space as outlined in the lease, and I have not asked her for any help or involvement in my pregnancy in any way so far. However, she responded that it wasn't about whether I needed her support or not. She said she still feels she has to advocate for herself, and that she does not want to carry any kind of responsibility connected to living with a pregnant person, because in her view, something could potentially go wrong. She also brought up the idea that if my mother or friends were to come over and take me to medical appointments, that alone would somehow make her part of the situation, even if indirectly. She then expressed that she felt I had not taken her feelings into account, and that she felt dragged into a situation she never agreed to when she signed the lease. According to her, since I am the one who changed the circumstances of our living arrangement by becoming pregnant, it is my responsibility to cover all costs associated with ending the lease early. To be completely clear, I have never asked her to continue living with me through my pregnancy until delivery, nor did I expect her to stay after I give birth. My only request was to remain in the apartment until our lease officially ends on June 30th, at which point I would be around 4 months pregnant and already preparing my next steps. However, she responded by saying that even this arrangement felt unfair. She said she was disappointed that I did not have the emotional awareness to understand how my pregnancy might affect her personally. She also mentioned that she had a difficult experience related to a previous pregnancy that did not continue to term, which she brought up as part of her reasoning. I tried to reassure her and even told her that I was willing to avoid discussing my pregnancy entirely with her, and would not involve her in anything related to it. Despite that, she continued to insist that it was still unreasonable for me to stay through the lease term, arguing that because I would still be pregnant during that time, it would be difficult for me to move in June. In her view, that meant I should instead be responsible for paying thousands of dollars to terminate the lease early. So now I'm left wondering if I'm actually in the wrong here. Do you think I handled this the wrong way for simply wanting to finish out the remaining 3 months of our lease, even if that means continuing to live together while I'm in the early stages of pregnancy, especially considering I may not have fully thought through how this could affect her or the liability she feels comes with it? Or on the other hand, am I justified in asking that we share the cost of breaking the lease early, since she is the one who no longer wants to continue living with me under the agreed terms? For some additional context, my partner and I were not in a long-distance relationship when we first started dating. The distance happened later, as he is currently living out of state while working and completing his MSc program. He also has a 3-year work contract that runs until next June, but he has already made plans to transition into a more flexible arrangement, allowing him to work and study remotely part-time around the time of my due date and after the baby is born. I also want to clarify something about the lease situation. When I asked my roommate about the possibility of continuing on a month-to-month basis after June 30th, I was only referring to a short extension of 1 or 2 months, not anything that would last all the way up to my delivery. And once she told me she wasn't comfortable with that idea, I immediately respected her decision and didn't push it further, because I understood where she was coming from. What I didn't expect, though, was that simply completing the remaining 3 months of our current lease would become such a serious issue for her. As a final clarification, this pregnancy was completely unexpected and unplanned. I only found out about it on Sunday, and since then I've been trying to process everything and consider my options, including how we wanted to move forward, given the circumstances. After discussing it with my partner, we ultimately decided to move forward with it. However, this is not something I have shared with my roommate, and at this point I certainly do not plan to. From her perspective, at that point, she didn't even know how the situation would unfold a few months from now, which makes the intensity of her reaction feel even more complicated to me. Commentator 1 right. Her decision not to continue on a month-to-month lease after the contract ends is completely reasonable. But expecting you to take her personal emotions and preferences into account when it comes to your personal situation is crossing a clear line. In her view, the lease should be broken early, and if that's what she wants, then she should be the one covering the cost. Definitely NTA. Original posters response. Thank you for that perspective. I do see now that I probably shouldn't have even brought up the idea of extending on a month-to-month basis, although just to clarify, I was only thinking of a short extension of about 1 or 2 months, not anything close to my full due date in late November. Once she said she wasn't comfortable with that, I immediately accepted it without any pushback and assured her I would make my own arrangements after the lease ended. Commentator 2 right. Honestly, this is really strange behavior. I would have told her that she didn't exactly warn me she was going to act like this when we signed the lease, so if anything, she's the one changing the situation, and therefore she should be the one paying to leave. Completely ridiculous. Commentator 3 right. She might want to take a page out of Sheldon's book and stick to a proper roommate agreement. Commentator 4 right. If she can't handle the idea of sharing space with someone who might experience a pregnancy complications, then realistically she probably shouldn't live with anyone capable of pregnancy at all. Complications can happen to anyone, and in many cases people don't even know they were pregnant when it happens. Commentator 5 right. I genuinely don't understand how being around a person who is 4 months pregnant would impact her life in any meaningful way at all. By the time the lease ends, you would be gone long before the baby is even born. Does she really not understand how pregnancy works? 4 months is not some extreme stage where moving becomes impossible. And I also don't understand her argument about appointments somehow forcing her involvement. You never asked her to participate in any of that. Does she also get upset when you go to a dentist appointment? This whole thing feels very odd. Original posters response. That's exactly what I keep trying to understand. I genuinely can't see how a friend coming over to pick me up for a medical appointment would somehow involve her in anything. But she insists that just having people come in and out of the apartment means she is being drawn into my pregnancy in some way, even if she has no interaction with them at all. When I asked her to explain what she meant, she couldn't really clarify beyond repeating that I should understand how this makes her feel involved. It was first part of my story, and I come back to you after 3 months with updates. Let's continue. What happened over the next 3 months? Now that my lease has officially come to an end, I felt it made sense to give an update on the situation. I'll include a short summary at the end as well. To add some context about my roommate, we actually knew each other for about a year before we decided to move in together. We weren't strangers or random flatmates, there was already a friendship there. One detail I mentioned earlier was her past experience related to pregnancy trauma. To be more specific, she had gone through and chose not to continue the pregnancy around 2 years ago. From what she told me, it was a decision she made because she did not want to have a child with her then fiancé, who she described as verbally toxic behavior and someone who had gotten her pregnant without proper consent. She was actually very open about this from the beginning. In fact, she told me about that experience on the very day we first met. Another important detail is that we also shared a mutual friend at the time I found out I was pregnant. This friend was actively trying to conceive with her husband, and she often spoke quite openly about her fertility journey, including losing a pregnancy. What stood out to me is that my roommate never seemed uncomfortable in those conversations. She participated in them, remained close with this friend, and appeared completely fine discussing those topics despite everything she had gone through. After that, things started to escalate. Following advice from several people online and some of my real-life friends, I decided to send my roommate a written message. In it, I clearly stated that I would be staying in the apartment until our lease officially ended on June 30th. I also made it clear that if she felt uncomfortable with that arrangement, she was free to take it up with the landlord and make alternative arrangements on her side. Her response was short, just a thumbs up emoji. And honestly, it didn't feel neutral. It came across as dismissive, almost like a sarcastic fine, rather than actual agreement. From that point on, the atmosphere in the apartment changed completely. Things became noticeably tense. We barely spoke in person after that. The only direct interaction we had was when I asked her if she could move her car so I could take out the trash bins. She said she would do it, but then never did, which left me rushing the next morning to get everything out on time myself. On top of that, she began frequently having guests over. What made it more uncomfortable was that she specifically invited someone I used to be close friends with, someone I had a falling out with for unrelated reasons. It started to feel less like normal socializing and more like intentional tension building. And then there was another shift. She even replaced all the shared photos of us in the apartment with pictures of herself together with that same former friend. I'll be honest, I wasn't perfect in how I handled everything either. At one point, out of frustration, I did something petty. I removed the microwave and toaster I had been using from the shared kitchen space, and I also placed a small personal photo in one of the common areas. I ended up taking it down again after about 2 days, because I didn't feel good about leaving it there. After that, I mostly withdrew completely from shared spaces in the apartment. I spent around 99% of my time inside my own room and avoided any unnecessary interaction. By early April, I had effectively stopped speaking to her altogether. I no longer used the kitchen or any of the common areas at all. Even when my mom came to visit, we stayed in my room the entire time, without going out into the rest of the apartment. Unexpectedly, without any prior notice, my roommate moved out on May 8th. When she left, the situation escalated even further. She took several of my belongings with her, blocked me in the driveway for hours during the process, and also refused to reimburse me for shared expenses, including a couch we had purchased together as well as utility bills she still owed me for. Later, when I reached out to her over text asking for repayment of those costs, her response was that she would not be sending any money at all. She claimed that I had caused her to feel forced to move out, and accused me of being hostile toward her friends to the point where they supposedly couldn't come over anymore. What made the whole situation even more confusing was that we hadn't spoken in over a month by that point. I had never tried to control who she invited over, and I certainly didn't see removing my microwave and toaster from the shared kitchen as some kind of attack, any more than I viewed her replacing our shared photos with pictures of someone I had previously fallen out with as an attack. By then, I was simply exhausted. I had reached the point where I was willing to walk away from the money I had spent on the couch and the unpaid utility bills if it meant I could finally move on from the entire situation. Even so, when she left, she also left the apartment in poor condition. She took several of my belongings, while leaving her side of the refrigerator full of spoiled food, trash scattered around her old room, unrepaired holes in the walls, and a cabinet that had been damaged by her dog. Surprisingly, she still ended up paying her share of rent for the month of June. Before everything between us fell apart and before she moved out, another mutual friend, although, to be fair, he was closer to me than to her, had asked whether he could occasionally stay with us during June. He was finishing a physician assistant residency program in our city and needed a place to stay on and off while completing it. At that time, both of us agreed, and we planned to let him use the spare room. After she moved out and had already been gone for over a month, my friend eventually came to stay. Since she had originally been living in the master bedroom with her own bathroom, despite us paying rent equally, I decided to set up the space she had previously used as her room for him instead. I arranged an air mattress and a small desk so he would have a proper place to stay. The spare bedroom was located on the opposite side of the apartment from the bathrooms and was also right next to the kitchen, so it made more sense logistically and gave him more privacy to use the room that had previously been hers. Because he was just a guest, I didn't charge him any rent or utilities. I simply let him stay there as a favor, and honestly, I appreciated having someone around during that time. About 2 weeks before the lease officially ended, and well over a month after she had already moved out, my roommate returned to the apartment unexpectedly, using a spare key, and brought her father with her. At that moment, my friend was in the apartment, although I was not there myself. She told him that they were there to patch up holes in the walls, but they only stayed for a few minutes and made no real attempt to repair any of the damage that had been left behind, including issues caused by her and her dog. Instead of following through with any repairs, she later escalated the situation in a different direction. She sent an email directly to our landlord, claiming that I was subletting without approval her room and demanding that I reimburse her for rent. Fortunately, our landlord remained calm and reasonable throughout the situation. He did not take her claims as valid and even made it clear that, from his perspective, This was a personal dispute between the two of us and not something he would intervene in financially. As a result, he refused her request for any rent reimbursement. Shortly after the landlord made it clear that he was not getting involved and essentially shut down her claims, she sent me another email, this time also CCing her parents. For context, she is a 28-year-old practicing attorney. In this email, she accused me of violating the lease agreement, claiming that she had reliable information suggesting that I had multiple people living in the apartment for an extended period of time. She also went further, stating that my friend who had been staying over was supposedly trespassing and staying there without permission. According to her message, this made the situation a lease violation claim on my part, and she demanded that I reimburse her for rent for both May and June. She ended the email by warning that if I did not comply, she would be escalating the matter further. Unfortunately for her, I also happen to be an attorney, and apparently I paid a lot more attention during torts and property law than she assumed I would. I went back and carefully reviewed our lease agreement. What I found was that it did not prohibit guests at all. The only relevant limitation was occupancy, specifically, a maximum of 2 non-leaseholding adults in the apartment at any given time. Importantly, the lease also made it clear that if that limit was exceeded, the landlord would have the right to adjust rent, but there was nothing in the agreement that granted either party any form of financial penalty or liquidated damages between co-tenants. After reviewing everything carefully, I sent her a clear and direct response. In that message, I explained that I had not violated our lease in any way. I also pointed out that she had not suffered any financial loss, that my friend was staying in the apartment with my full permission as a guest, and that, as a co-tenant, I had every legal right to access and use the entire property. Therefore, I stated clearly that I would not be reimbursing her for anything. To support my position, I also attached screenshots and text messages showing that she had previously agreed to reimburse me for the couch, had acknowledged that her dog caused damage to the apartment, and had also explicitly given permission for guests, including the same friend in question, to be over at any time. Finally, I addressed the broader situation more directly. I included a definition of attempts to pressure me regarding my pregnancy decision and explained why her actions, in my view, aligned with attempts to pressure me into terminating my pregnancy, followed by financial retaliation when I did not comply. I ended the message by telling her not to contact me again, and informed her that she was welcome to take the matter to small claims court if she chose to do so, and that if she did, I would be filing a counterclaim her for unpaid utilities and the cost of the couch. Since that point, everything has gone quiet from her side. I moved out last weekend, and I also requested that the landlord split the security deposit equally between us, which he agreed to do without issue. On my end, my pregnancy is progressing well, and I'm now nearly halfway through it. As for the situation overall, it finally feels like it has come to an end, or at least I really hope so. Commentator, right. Hell yeah. My only question is, did she ever show signs of being romantically interested in you? Because honestly, this sounds like someone who built a narrative in their head and then reacted badly when reality didn't match it. It almost reads like a situation where someone assumes a deeper personal connection that doesn't actually exist, and then feels betrayed when boundaries are enforced. Author's response. That's not the first time I've heard that interpretation. Personally, I never got the impression that she was attracted to me in any romantic sense. But what I did notice in hindsight is that she treated me very differently compared to her other female friends. She often described me as a safe person for her, and over time there was an increasing expectation that I would suppress my own needs or wants if they conflicted with hers. Sometimes it wasn't even a request, but an outright assumption. Looking back, I don't think it was about romantic interest. I think it was more about control and imbalance. It felt like she believed she had the right to define my behavior based on her emotional state. And when I refused to move out after everything with the lease, it seemed to trigger a much stronger reaction than I expected. Almost like she genuinely believed I would apologize for getting pregnant without considering her feelings, and then quietly take on all the financial consequences without question. Commentator response. As someone with a background in social work, this reads like a situation where there may have been romantic feelings that were never acknowledged or reciprocated. When those expectations weren't met, especially after you became pregnant and it was clear you were committed to your partner, it seems to have shifted into resentment and escalating toxicity. At the same time, the level of control you're describing raises concerns that go beyond just emotional attachment. It starts to resemble dynamics you would typically see in unhealthy relational patterns. Did she ever attempt to control other aspects of your life, like who could visit, what you wore, or how you spent your time? And assuming you've now moved out, if she attempts further contact, it might be worth considering formal protective steps, such as a legal protection steps, especially if the behavior escalates. Hopefully, it won't come to that. Author's response. I think you're very close to what was actually happening. She frequently described my partner as harmful and would tell me stories about him that were either heavily distorted, exaggerated, or in some cases completely fabricated. Whenever I questioned those claims, she insisted that I had been the one who originally told her those things, even though I knew I never had. For example, I once mentioned a single argument during our 3-year relationship where my partner used some harsh language toward me. It was an isolated incident. I made it clear that I wasn't okay with it, and it never happened again. After hearing that, she immediately decided he was no longer welcome in the apartment, saying she didn't feel comfortable around him. She even compared him to people from difficult periods of her past, despite the fact that he had never interacted with her in a negative way. Because we were in a long-distance relationship, this meant that every time my partner visited, I had to pay for a hotel instead of having him stay with me. Eventually, I pushed back on this arrangement. She then changed her stance slightly and said she would allow him to visit, but only under the condition that I constantly update her on our whereabouts so she would never have to be in the same space as him. At one point, I directly asked her if my partner had ever done anything to her personally that made her feel unsafe or uncomfortable. She admitted that he had not. However, she also said she was in therapy trying to understand how I could remain in a relationship with someone like him. Commentator response. You might want to check your belongings for an AirTag if you're on iPhone. It sounds like someone might be overly focused on your movements. This really gives the impression of someone who is unusually fixated on you. Author's response. I didn't mention this earlier, but her initial reaction to my pregnancy also really caught me off guard. When I told her I was pregnant, her immediate response was, "Oh, don't worry, pregnancy-related options isn't that bad." At that point, I clarified that I was actually considering continuing the pregnancy, and that's when the dynamics seemed to shift quite noticeably. Within about 5 days after that conversation, she told me she no longer felt comfortable living with me at all, and everything escalated from there. I remember at one point trying to put into words how it felt, and I said something like, it felt like my housing situation was being tied to my pregnancy decision, or continuing the pregnancy and being financial consequences. Her response was that this wasn't about forcing me into anything. She said she was simply asking me to take responsibility for my actions. She also told me that I was making it difficult for her to self-advocate because I was reacting as if she was attacking me. And honestly, I remember thinking, isn't that exactly what's happening here? So yeah, this was definitely one of the strangest roommate stories I've come across. It's understandable that living with someone can require compromises when unexpected situations come up. But in this case, the lease was only going to last a few more months, and the original poster never expected her roommate to help with the pregnancy or take on any extra responsibilities. One thing that also stood out to me was the discussion in the comments. Quite a few people wondered whether the roommate's reaction was really about the pregnancy at all, or if there was something deeper behind it, possibly jealousy or an unhealthy attachment. Of course, we can't know for sure, but it's certainly an interesting perspective. What do you think? Was the roommate being reasonable, or did she completely overreact? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us bring you more fascinating stories like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.